I'm Cindy Sullivan with Key Community Management. Today we have Zac Moretz with us. He is managing partner with Moretz Skufca. And in addition to representing many homeowners associations in the area, Zac is also a certified specialist in commercial real estate law. So thank you for being here, Zac.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
Appreciate the opportunity.
So our topic today is regarding what happens after a lien is filed on a property in a homeowners association. Most board members know they can file a lien if accounts are not current. And the question is, what happens with that whole process? What we're going to talk about today would be primarily regarding North Carolina law. South Carolina is a little bit different, so we want to keep that in mind. So Zac, I guess the first question is, most board members know about filing liens when they become delinquent, but really the question seems to be, what do you do after that point? What happens with the lien once it's filed? And I guess the first question for specifics for you is, what is a lien and what does it provide to the homeowners association?
Right. I think most of your boards know that they should file a lien if someone gets delinquent, but we find a lot of times they don't know exactly what a lien is. So a lien accomplishes two things. One, it secures the debt prior to any other debts that may be filed after that. Maybe there's a judgment or some other liens. So by filing the lien, you have priority. And number two, it allows you to foreclose on the real estate to get paid. So it takes a debt and secures it onto a piece of real estate. The law in North Carolina is the debt must be at least 30 days overdue before the lien can be filed. And then if you're going to foreclose, the debt must be at least 90 days overdue.
Okay.
South Carolina does not have those same deadlines. The process is similar, however.
Okay, and so my question is, what repercussion is there on the owner when there's a lien, as far as refinancing or selling? How does that affect property?
So that's going to prevent them from refinancing or selling the property without the lien being paid. So that's obviously another great advantage to filing the lien, is it can't be transferred to another party without it being paid.
Right, and so that would be found by the closing attorney's office when they check the title.
Right, so it's in the public records now, and it has to be dealt with before the property can be transferred.
Okay, so that's the reason that the association would want to follow the process, because it would prevent any property from passing to another owner and them not getting their money.
Right, and you do not have that opportunity, obviously, if you don't file the lien. If the property got sold, while the first owner still owes money, the second owner is not responsible for that. Now, you can still sue the first owner personally, but you can't satisfy that debt out of the real estate.
So it's important to do that, and so we call that the board's fiduciary duty, right? So within their documents, it's going to say this is the process you should follow in general when there's outstanding debt.
And filing the lien is fairly straightforward, not very expensive, very quick process. So there's really no reason to avoid doing that once you hit the 30 days threshold, something like that. At least you got to follow your own documents, but it's not expensive, and it can be released immediately too. If they come in and pay, it can easily be canceled. So the lien is very important.
Another thing that we like to do with our communities is to establish a collection policy. So maybe their assessments, for example, are $50 a quarter, and so perhaps filing a lien for $50 past due is unreasonable. So they might wait 2 or 3 periods. So to have that internal process in place is recommended, so at what point you would move forward. That makes sense.
Very important to treat everyone the same. If you're going to wait for a certain dollar amount to accrue or a certain time period, you want to treat everybody that way. So important to have a policy and to follow that policy. For sure.
That's good. And your firm can help associations.
Right, and that's one of the first things when we get a new HOA client, we go through their policies, and that's sort of almost one of the first things we recommend is make sure you have a collections policy, because you don't want to be treating different boards, treating different people differently. That's not fair. Everybody should be treated the same, and it's easier for the board too if you're going to move to that lien step, you can say, I'm sorry, this is our policy. We have to treat everybody the same. It's not me making a decision. It's not the board. It's nothing personal. We have to follow the policy.
That's important. That's really helpful, because what we find is if there's not a process in place, you have inconsistencies, and then you have new board members that might say, well, I really think this is a good idea. some new idea, and then everything can break down.
Yep.
So that's helpful to have a resource like your firm. So let's talk about if a lien is filed and there's been no payment, no correspondence from the owner to the law firm. Is foreclosure the only option at that point? We all hear that word. It's scary. It's big and scary, and it's expensive.
Right.
So what do we recommend?
So you've got a couple of options. You can sue the homeowner. So we have a few HOAs, not many, and we don't necessarily recommend this, but that prefer to take the homeowner to small claims court and get a judgment against them. That's suing the person, and the judgment does follow them around for 10 years until it's paid, and it actually does attach to the real property eventually. A judgment does. The other option is to go through with foreclosure. Foreclosure is usually recommended because it is more effective. Yeah. You pretty much have to address it once the foreclosure is filed. And especially in North Carolina, it's a fairly efficient process. It takes about 60 days. If you pushed it, you could get it done in 60 days. Mm-hmm. And the HOA can't assess the cost of doing so against the homeowner. So it is an effective and fairly simple and straightforward process in North Carolina. A little more complicated in South Carolina, but.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about how you handle along the way when you're recommending an account for foreclosure. What are you searching out to see if it's a good candidate for that?
Right. So first thing, we always continue communicating with the homeowner. We don't just move forward with foreclosure and hold off on all communications. The goal for us is to collect the money owed to the HOA. We don't want to take someone's home, and the homeowners association doesn't really want to own the home. Mm-hmm. So we definitely keep the communications open and still try to get it paid. But while we're doing that, we're going to do a title search, check what is owed on the property, try to get an idea of what mortgages might be ahead of us. Are there any taxes owed? Are there any judgments? Are there things recorded in the public records ahead of our lien? Gives us an idea of if it's a good candidate or not. And we also want to know if the lender, if their first mortgage lender may also be foreclosing on them already. If so, we may want to wait and see what happens with that process.
That's a good point, because if we are attempting to foreclose and then the bank does, then we get nothing and all of our efforts are wiped out, typically.
Right. First of all, I want to say in North Carolina, we're required to get a written authorization from the board before we can move forward with foreclosure on each particular one. So that's important in North Carolina to be aware of that. Right, the lender foreclosure, if it's completed all the way through, does wipe out the HOA's lien. But that's only if the lender foreclosure is a completed process. So if the lender works it out with the homeowner, or enters into a settlement, or they refinance, different things like that, our lien still stays in place. So all the more reason to go ahead and get the lien filed. Right. And decide whether or not to prosecute the foreclosure for the HOA aggressively, or maybe wait and see what the lender is doing. But a lot of lenders can take a long time. There's some of them take 1 to 2 years just to get through the process. If you're going to wait that long, you may be waiting a long time. So typically we'd want to go ahead and move forward with the HOA foreclosure.
And then sometimes there could be a bankruptcy that becomes part of the picture.
That's right.
So with that, we would do something different, because you can't.
Right. Now, bankruptcy is a whole other matter. If you see a bankruptcy in the homeowner's file, you have to stop what you're doing, and then you got to go through the bankruptcy court, and that's gets a little more complicated. But and typically we will get paid something. It depends on what type of bankruptcy and things. But the lender foreclosure, if it goes all the way through, and the bankruptcy are the two issues where the HOA potentially could suffer a loss. But keep in mind, the point of this whole process is to get the homeowner to pay. We're not trying to take their home. Right. Most 99% pay eventually in the foreclosure process. Just some don't believe we're serious, and you just have to do it for them to pay. We don't want the home by any means, but if we're not getting any response, that is the process that's available to us, and it's effective.
Well, and it's important, again, to have a consistency, because it could become an epidemic in a community if folks are not paying their assessment and there's no repercussion. Then they all talk and they say, well, you don't really have to pay that, and then you have an issue meeting your budget.
And I'm sure you find, as well as we've found, when you do some foreclosures, the word seems to get around, and your compliance rates on the assessment seem to go up when you.
That's right.
Again, you're not trying to punish anyone, but you do have a fiduciary duty to
That's what
collect
they
these
signed
dues.
up for, That's right. So, all right, so my last question then is just, if it does go to foreclosure, what happens if the HOA owns it?
Okay.
What do you do now?
So we can say we complete the foreclosure. What we need to do at that point is have a plan on what we're gonna do with the property. And what we say is fix it, list it, flip it. So you gotta do some of the basic repairs. You gotta
Yes.
get the lawn mowed and things like that and make sure it's reasonably habitable.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to get it listed with a broker that's familiar with that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to get it sold as quickly as possible or rent it. Normally there's a little bit of equity. You can sell the house for $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Just the HOA just needs to get its money back. It doesn't need to
Right.
make a killing, and we often have the homeowner won't buy it back from us, actually.
Right.
But you can also lease it. That can quickly recoup the dues that are owed.
Mhm.
And leasing, you need to have a special lease that your attorney draws up because there's some special issues here because the lender could still come through and foreclose, for instance, and then the
Right.
tenant would have to get out after 90 days, perhaps.
And so oftentimes do you find that you may have an investor that purchases it when it goes to sale, so then the HOA doesn't really have to do anything to the property?
That's
And-
ideal, for sure. There
Yeah.
are investors that are picking these up now.
See, so that's helpful. And then at that point, the investor, just want to be clear, would basically inherit the mortgage, and then the association would get their money, and then they're done.
Right, that's
So
the
that's the
ideal
cleanest
situation. Let them
situation.
deal with the mortgage and the
Mhm.
repairs and things like that.
We don't like it when it goes all the way, but there's ways to work through the whole process. So,
Mhm, for sure.
well, that's great. So, anything in summary you'd like to share?
I just say, make every effort to collect it. Foreclosures shouldn't be the only option. You want to try to determine how much equity is owed and if there are any other judgments or liens in front of you, and then fix it, list it, and flip it as quickly as possible if you do get ownership of the property.
Sounds good. Well, so for more information about how you can make your community great, you can visit our website at www.keycmi.com or the Law Office of Moretz and Skufca. What's your website, Zac?
MoretzandSkufca.com, which is, Google it. It's hard to spell.
If you can spell it, you get a special reward. Thanks. Until next time. We'll see you then.